This is crazy! SpaceX's sixth flight of Starship is soon. What's left to do? The next Starship to fly appears to be missing some tiles, but why? We have a Flight 6 launch date. A new inside look into the Fish and Wildlife Service reveals something surprising about where they get their information from, and it is not what you'd expect. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. Flight 6 is right around the corner. We have a possible launch date which we'll talk about later, and SpaceX's path seems more transparent than ever before. With the next orbital flight test of Starship possibly happening as soon as 2 weeks from now, it's no wonder SpaceX's workers have been scrambling to make final preparations for the pad. Thankfully, it appears the pad has held up exceedingly well after Flight 5, with most of the repair work seemingly already completed. This is especially surprising given all of the extra stress from SpaceX catching the booster out of mid-air. Thanks to some amazing new slow-motion footage from Cosmic Perspective, we can see just how taxing that maneuver was, especially on the tower. Yeah. In the slow-motion footage you can clearly see the tower quickly bending to one side as the booster lands on it. And yet, as of now, almost no work has been done on the tower itself. Other than what appear to be a few minor inspections, the tower and the chopsticks seem to need almost no work. Whew, that's a good thing. Of course, it could be that SpaceX is just focusing on the launch mount, and much more work will begin on the tower soon. However, that does appear unlikely. Following the booster's static fire, we know that the majority of the systems on the launch mount should be operational. However, that hasn't stopped SpaceX workers from going over every part of it. One area in particular the team seems to be focusing on is the booster quick disconnect, as we were able to spot workers on nearly every inch of it, with some even climbing on top of it to perform work. Hey! After SpaceX rolled some flex hosing to the launch site a few weeks ago, we assumed that this was for replacement. However, seeing as how it worked for the static fire, it's possible SpaceX just plans on replacing it with an upgraded hose. If that is the case, then these workers may be in the process of prepping for that replacement. It is also possible that the booster quick disconnect is actually damaged and that problems arose during the static fire due to it. However, it is likely that SpaceX would have noticed this before the static fire and postponed it until after necessary repairs were made. Besides that, very little work appears to be going on at Pad A, which should hopefully mean that most of it is ready for the next flight. Getting to look at that slow-mo footage from Cosmic Perspective was a treat. However, there may soon be some of you who rival it, and we will all be able to see it in person. But to see that, we will need to move over to Hoppy, which has been getting a makeover. Nice. After being moved to the parking lot from the launch site and having some of its external sheets removed, Hoppy has now been getting some paint and protective coating. And this is for a good reason. Hold on to your seatbelts. According to some workers on site, Hoppy may soon be open to the public. Of course, for that to be the case, a Hoppy needs to look presentable, which is what all this work is about, so pretty soon we might all be able to get some views like this. Moving over now to around where Hoppy used to be, we can see that the tank farm has been receiving some work as well. After a new cryocooler was installed a few weeks ago, the area around it has received quite a bit of groundwork, likely in preparation for more tanks. More tanks. This will also facilitate the installation of more piping to connect this orbital tank farm to Pad B, which will run off the same tank farm. That is why this expansion is crucial. SpaceX will need extra capacity to facilitate this new tower, especially if it wants to increase its launch cadence from Starbase. More launches, more fuel. That's also why it's so interesting to see that, as of now, very little work has been completed on the space where the old vertical tank farm used to be. It's surprising that those prime pieces of real estate are being left vacant. It is possible that these will be filled in later. However, it is also possible that SpaceX determined this area wasn't suitable for even horizontal tanks given its proximity to Pad A. After all, we can already see damage to some of the horizontal tanks in this area, possibly meaning SpaceX will decide to leave it empty or fill it with more robust equipment rather than tanks. That might be good. SpaceX is performing all of this work so that it can operate out of Pad B. How's the work on that going? Things seem to be going well, with even more concrete work around the base of the new tower and excavators hard at work forming the land into what SpaceX needs most. A second operational Starship pad at Starbase. The tower itself also appears to be coming along nicely as well. Over the past few months, SpaceX workers have been finalizing all of the internals of the tower before it receives its pair of catch arms and its ship quick disconnect. This work is very extensive, including connecting all of the pipes that were pre-installed in the modules to the ground, filling the modules with concrete, fully connecting the modules and reinforcing them. Except these reinforcements weren't originally supposed to be on the tower. These additions to the tower were made after SpaceX performed tests to verify that the booster catch was possible. During these tests, they found that the tower and the chopsticks needed extra reinforcement. It appears that most of these reinforcements are done now, meaning it's likely all SpaceX is waiting for now is for the reinforcements being built at the Sanchez site to be complete. And this launch pad needs a launch mount too, of course, and we've seen a lot of work with that as well. Shortly after SpaceX began stacking the first 4 pieces of the newly redesigned launch mount, our photographers were able to spot these moving down the road. Yep, those are more launch mount pieces. Taking a closer look at these 2 additional pieces shows just how robust these launch mounts have to be. The steel on the walls is likely an inch or more thick, or a couple of centimeters. There were 4 already here, meaning we have 6 in total now and are only missing the last 2. SpaceX also isn't just transporting these sections, they are stacking them. Shortly after they were moved to the Sanchez site, the second 2 corner pieces were hooked up to the crane and stacked on top of the orbital launch mount, meaning all 4 corner pieces have now been attached. Yes! We also appear to be missing some pieces of the launch mount's water-cooled launch table shielding, which you can see part of here. It will utilize a similar approach to the water deluge plate below Pad A, but with a different purpose. While the deluge plate at Pad A is the primary defense line against the booster's raw force, at Pad B it will only protect the table itself from far less force. We'll be sure to keep an eye out for those in the coming days as this second section races towards completion. Overall, this launchpad appears to be coming along quickly, and it appears SpaceX is on track to complete it on schedule around the first quarter of next year. Having this pad ready will also align with SpaceX's other goals of demonstrating the first in-orbit refueling around the same time. As needing a second launch pad, especially one that doesn't need weeks of refurbishment, will almost be needed for this demonstration. 2 launches in rapid succession. SpaceX wants to have as many launch pads as possible to achieve its goal of rapid launch cadence and rapid reusability of the entire rocket. However, to achieve that, it needs to recover both the booster and, more importantly now, the ship. This is why SpaceX has been focusing so heavily on the heat shield of Starship, as it's not just a difficult problem to solve, but likely the most difficult one. Yup. If SpaceX can master the heat shield for Starship, it will enable them to have a fully reusable rocket, which is the holy grail of rocketry and will enable true space exploration. Being able to reuse the entire rocket repeatedly, cheaply and reliably is the true goal of the Starship development program. Let's look at the next ship. SpaceX wants to try to crack this puzzle with Ship 31. Or at least they want to go the next big step. But before I tell you about that, we've looked into our channel metrics and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. We just hit 500,000 subscribers, 500,000 of you. Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. And while you're at it, give us a like and become a wise supporter. Why? Because you'll gain access to a massive amount of extra content. With it, you get access to daily new Starbase photo galleries, including all those we've posted so far. Satellite, aerial and ground photos, more than 400 posts in the past 2 years alone, with up to 7 picture galleries per week, insights, chats with me, you name it. Thank you so much, you rock. Now back to Ship 31 and that next step towards Mars. SpaceX has been hard at work over the past few months getting this ship flight ready. Although I should say they are getting it re-entry ready because almost all of the recent work has been done on the heat shield. Ship 31's heat shield is a bit of a mystery. We believed they would remove the entire heat shield and replace it with an upgraded one, however only the glued-on tiles were replaced. Shortly after that, SpaceX began removing a large line of tiles along the edges of the heat shield. It appears likely that these were tiles that were just not needed, and SpaceX will be leaving them off. They'll leave them off? This is likely due to knowledge they learned during the 5th flight test, but we will know more in the next few days as SpaceX moves from upgrading this ship to preparing it for flight readiness, or re-entry readiness. Now SpaceX is focusing on the flaps, which are likely the hardest part of the ship to keep safe during re-entry. The flap hinges began to melt on both the 4th and 5th flights, which were the only two successfully reaching re-entry. Yeah, the others toasted. That's why SpaceX is now focusing almost all of its attention on the flaps, with engineers finally replacing their tiles. They've extended the ship's flaps to gain more access to the heat shield and the hinge. Hopefully all these improvements can finally fix the problems SpaceX has been having with these hinges, as much of the hardware for the aft flap design remains the same between Block 1 and 2. If they can figure out how to make this heat shield rapidly and reliably reusable, Starship is on track to achieving things we can't even imagine right now. All of the work they have been doing on this ship's heat shield is to help inform decisions made on their later designs, such as those used on Ship 33, which is set to be the next to fly. But before it can do that, it still needs to complete quite a few things. After a successful series of cryogenic proof tests at Massey's, 33 proved it was ready to move on to the next big thing. With the cryo tests out of the way, all that's left for this ship is its engine installation and static fires. That is why on the morning of the 2nd, Ship 33 was placed back on its transport stand before rolling to the production site. From here, it was moved back into Megabay 2 before being placed on the back left work stand once again, this time to hopefully receive its engines. Thanks to some inside sources, we know that Ship 33 can be equipped with both Raptor 2.5 and Raptor 3. However, unless SpaceX has managed to produce flight-ready Raptor 3s rapidly, it's almost guaranteed that the ship will be equipped with Raptor 2. Although SpaceX is known for its rapid development, so we'll have to keep an eye out for any Raptor 3s rolling to Starbase. You might be confused by the term Raptor 2.5. This very likely describes a Raptor 2 engine with connectors that mimic a Raptor 3. This allows the construction of Raptor 3 capable hardware even before Raptor 3 is abundantly available. Either way, given all of the current changes and any changes SpaceX might want to make to the ship after Flight 6, we likely won't see a static fire of the ship until early next year. After the static fire, we'll have to see what else SpaceX decides to do with this ship. The heat shield for Ship 33 is quite advanced. However, they will likely still want to make some adjustments after Flight 6. Once that's complete, this ship should be ready to demonstrate what Block 2 ships are capable of. Now let's tackle what you read in the title, the launch date for Starship Flight 6. Our initial prediction of November 11th wasn't too far off. A NOTAM for pilots was released for Starship Flight 6 and it has a date. November 18th. Since the license is already there, this date can be seen as very serious. The likelihood of SpaceX making this date happen can be considered very high. Get your popcorn ready, we're in for the next launch barely a month after Flight 5. SpaceX is accelerating. SpaceX has been making rapid developments with Starship over the past few years after the first flight cratered the launch pad and exploded mid-air. Yes, that was cool. Despite that flight seeming so long ago, at this point, can you believe it was already 2 years ago? And new information is still coming out about it after such a long time. In this case, the new information concerns what happened after the flight, particularly with the Fish and Wildlife Services. Because FWS is a government agency, it is required to release non-classified documents if requested. Recently, documents regarding the agency's response to the first flight were requested and released. This new release includes several emails between people working for the Fish and Wildlife Service and at the time being busy with SpaceX. Reports like these are released quite often and typically aren't worth covering. However, what was recently revealed was a bit surprising on quite a few levels. For starters, it appears that the agency actually had very little direct communication with SpaceX. What? In one of the released emails, they wondered if there was any hope of receiving certain data from SpaceX. Because of this lack of communication and a seeming lack of experience regarding certain topics, such as rocketry, they were forced to use other sources of information, including one source that may seem a bit familiar. Yup, in the Fish and Wildlife Service there seem to be Y-fans. Now I have to say that while our news coverage is high frequency and as thorough as possible with first-hand accounts and photographers on the ground, some of their other sources seem to be less so. Another source they use is a well-known anti-Starship advocate. This shows that going this route to do research, especially for policy action, can be a bit dangerous, and using first-hand accounts of your own is a much better way to do things when legal decisions are on the line. Hopefully, communications between the Fish and Wildlife Service and SpaceX have improved since the first test flight. We have reached out for a statement from Fish and Wildlife Services, but I have not heard back as of today. We'll definitely share a reply if we receive one. Some of these concerns have even risked delaying Starship's timeline to be ready for NASA to land people on the moon in 2026 with Artemis 3. Besides Starship, many other parts of Artemis need to be ready for this mission to work. One of those parts is the Orion crew capsule, but it's been having some issues. A trip to the moon during Artemis 1 revealed that the heat shield wasn't quite as robust as previously thought. When the capsule returned, the heat shield had excessively worn away in certain areas, and the engineers weren't sure why at first. Or at least until now, when it was revealed at a Lunar Exploration Analysis Group meeting that after almost 2 years, engineers know the cause of this increased degradation of the ablative heat shield. Unfortunately, we weren't told the reason, only that they are currently determining how to proceed with the next Orion capsule for Artemis 2. The heat shield is already built and attached to the Orion capsule for this mission, meaning engineers would need to replace the whole heat shield and redo many parts of the attachments, which could take some time. However, seeing as this will be the first crewed flight test of an Orion capsule and the first human spaceflight around the moon since 1972, engineers likely won't be taking any chances. It wouldn't be surprising if they decided to replace the whole heat shield, even if it may end up costing them another year. Delays seem to be par for the course with programs for Artemis and those adjacent to Artemis, such as the Viper lunar rover, which is part of NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services or CLPS program. Or should I say it was part of the CLPS program until a few months ago when it was announced that it would be cancelled and not fly to the moon despite being essentially ready to fly. Fortunately though, there does appear to be some good news now. Despite being cancelled, Viper has continued testing. It underwent thermal vacuum testing in September, which was the final pre-launch test it needed, meaning it is now 100% ready to fly. Go Viper! With this testing complete, hopefully NASA will be able to find another partner to take over the Viper mission. This rover was designed to explore the lunar south pole and hunt for water ice permanently hidden in the shadows of craters, so it would definitely be a valuable mission to take over. It's clear NASA has no intent of launching this already complete rover on their almost complete lander, which will currently be launching with a concrete mass simulator instead of Viper. Fortunately, not all NASA missions have ended like this. Many of NASA's flagship missions have been highly successful. One of those is the International Space Station, which just a few days ago officially celebrated its 24th year of continuous human occupation. This means humans have been in space consistently for the last 24 years. Having a continuous human presence in space has provided NASA with the opportunity to see how long-term space travel affects the human body. It has also given scientists a place to perform research in microgravity and the unique environment of space. However, maintaining this presence in space has been difficult, as many resupply missions are needed to support the crew. Yet another launch of a commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station on board SpaceX's Cargo Dragon was launched. However, that wasn't the only milestone, it was also the 400th successful Falcon 9 launch. Most of these launches have happened in the past few years, with 100 of those happening this year alone. Falcon 9 has changed the space industry as a very reliable, very cheap and versatile rocket family. Soon it will be replaced by SpaceX's Starship, even though the industry hasn't yet closed the gap to Falcon 9. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm. This is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A new Raptor design and our epic Flight 5 design are both up. Starting today, we have one of the biggest sales of the year in the United States Y store until November 11th with a crazy 22% off on everything. Perfect to grab that Christmas gift. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Exploration and what was shortly after that, SpaceX began removing I'm sorry, I don't even know why I'm laughing.